Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our Tuesday weekly live stream. I'm Daniella Young, TEDx speaker, author, and co-founder of Cavness HR. I'll tell you more about that at the end. Every Tuesday, I write a blog on some sort of topic that has to do with workplace culture, leadership, human resource issues, something that we'd like to dive a little bit more deeply into, or that some of our clients have been struggling with, a realization that has occurred, etc. I like to keep it fresh, keep it with what is going on in the world. So every week on Tuesday at 12:30 Pacific time, which is where we're at in Seattle, or 2:30 Central, you can find us live on all kinds of social media doing a discussion. And I love if people join in and chat online. If you're watching this one today, it is pre-recorded, but usually it is live. So mark your calendars, make sure to follow us. What I want to talk about today is the language of culture change. If you've been paying attention, you notice that we are in the middle of kind of a culture war right now, not just to do with workplace culture, but to do with anything related to culture. People are asking questions like, why are women suddenly so angry? Why are people of color all of a sudden upset? And the truth is, none of this is sudden, none of this is out of nowhere. But there are huge groups of marginalized voices that are finally starting to speak out about things that have always been unacceptable. Today, I want to focus on the language that we use and how it affects certain things in our cultures, whether those are workplace cultures, family, groups of friends, or a community. So I think we all understand that language is important, but sometimes we don't realize how important it is. You know, recently I was on an HR panel and we were discussing little small tactical things that we can do and shifts that we can make to change the culture in our workplaces. And there was a very interesting answer from a Canadian man who had focused on language change in his corporation, specifically around the fact that because Canada is a bilingual country, he made a change top down that he instituted that everything in his company would be bilingual, both in English and in French. And there were two important parts to this story. First was that he realized this was important because he asked his employees. He even talked about it on the panel about how it might seem strange that a heterosexual white man was on a panel discussing diversity and culture change. But he had done this interesting work about crowdsourcing the problems, asking people in his company and really listening to their answers. There is this important understanding that while it might seem like a small thing to those in power, it could be a huge thing for his employees. Secondly, he accepted the fact that this might slow down some operations once in a while, and he was okay with that. He was okay with saying that sometimes we might have to wait to move forward on a few things until the documents could be properly translated. And the end result he presented was interesting. First of all, it wasn't nearly as disruptive as people thought it would be. And second of all, it made a huge, huge difference to his French-speaking employees. It wasn't about the understanding, the tactical part of it. They all understood English. It was about the recognition and the importance and the fact that it made them feel seen and far less marginalized. Here in Washington State, we had another interesting experience in the military spouse community along these same lines. As you may or may not know, I'm an Army veteran, but I'm also married to an active duty soldier, which puts me in the military spouse community as well. And there's actually out here, the governor has a military transition council where he receives advice from all members across all spectrum of government organizations and nonprofit and civilian organizations that deal with military and taking soldiers and helping them transition back into the workplace. And military spouses are included in most of these things. The problem with the military spouse community is pretty simple. Studies show that it is the most overeducated and underemployed group in the entire country. Now, while it's simple to put that problem in a phrase, it's not that simple to figure out how to deal with it. So the governor's office did a huge study, a bunch of surveys, and all of this stuff, trying to figure out what pieces they were missing and how they could connect the dots. Why was it that there are all of these programs to help veterans and spouses, but yet they were rarely getting used by the spouses? And an interesting thing came back from the study. There was a lot of things that were expected, but there was one thing that was really unexpected. And that was when a large number of spouses came back and said, we are so tired of being referred to as and spouse. And nobody had expected that because nobody had asked the members of that community. The thing is, one of the underlying problems with the culture for military spouses is that they are always expected to put themselves second. The service member is always the most important. I had this very drastic awakening the day that I was demoted from captain to Mr. somebody's wife. And that was interesting and difficult for me. What came out of this study was a simple switch in consciousness that the people in power, the people running these programs, could say, these programs are for military spouses and veterans, just as often as they say veterans and military spouses. That one simple tweak is going to make a huge difference in how welcome the military spouses feel in this community where they're absolutely 100% of the time marginalized off to the side as support. Human beings fight change. This is normal. And the fact that we feel uncomfortable when we're being asked to change the way we've always done does not make us bad people. However, it is important to understand how cultural norms work. The way things are generally tends to be the way that we think things should be. And so anyone trying to push change makes it uncomfortable. A lot of times, word choices and language is so closely connected to the way we think about these things that it is an especially hard change to make. This discussion is incredibly strong in communities that speak gendered languages. Like you can think of any Latin language, for example. Every noun, which also means the corresponding verb, has acquired a gender. So it's either male, female, or in some rarer cases, neutral. And on top of this, whenever there's a mixed group, so say you're talking about male friends and female friends, you default male. So you say amigos if you're talking about a mixed group, where you say amigas if you're talking about a group of girlfriends, and amigos if you're talking about a group of male friends. And by the way, anyone that thinks that English is not one of those gendered Latin languages, you could not be more wrong. You only have to look at the way we use the word guys to refer to a whole group of people, or how much it stands out when you're talking about leadership or someone in an executive position and you use the word she instead of he. And you'll start to realize that English has its own issues with gendered language. The interesting thing for me has been, and it has tied sort of all of these examples together, is I'm dealing with this with my daughter right now. So if you know me and follow me, you know that I have an almost 4-year-old and I'm raising her in 3 Latin-based languages, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And it's a really amazing journey. It's taught me a lot about culture and vulnerability and just life in general. But she's nearing the age where she's getting very focused on getting her words right. And she loves to talk. And we talk a lot. But it's super interesting how she just completely simplifies this very complex question of how to deal with gendered language. And she does this by just literally having 0 patience for the default male. She does not understand why it is so hard to just say amigos y amigas when you are talking about a mixed group, and she doesn't let me do it. And the interesting is, the first couple times I started trying to explain to her the way that Brazilian Portuguese in this instance works. But eventually I realized, hey, why am I trying to explain to my 4-year-old why this outdated, archaic, gendered trend in the language makes sense? It doesn't make sense. And it's not that hard to just do both. And it's it's an interesting reinforcement of this debate that we always have. We spend time worrying about how difficult culture change is going to be and what kinds of problems are going to pop up. And oftentimes we allow those to let us halt change in its tracks instead of just doing it and then figuring out what are the issues that we have to deal with. Oftentimes, they're not the issues that you think they are, and the issues that you do think you're going to have turn out to be an extra second or two of work and really not that difficult. So when you are thinking and talking about language and culture and change, here's a few things to think about for your organization or your family. Have you talked to your people about what language matters to them? Especially if you are a member of a group that has traditionally been in power or a dominant group. Have you taken the time to truly survey your group to figure out what matters to them and to make sure that those traditionally marginalized voices understand that their opinions will be listened to, believed, and carefully considered? Nobody could have predicted that the military spouse community took the most issue with the word and always being second place. But when they asked them, that's how they found out. So the first step is making sure you take the time to talk to your people about what language matters to them. Step number 2 is to remember that making a change doesn't mean we have to blame ourselves or blame others for what was done in the past. Sometimes this makes us exceptionally hesitant to accept change, because if we accept that we've been doing something wrong our whole lives, or something that made a group of people feel like marginalized or overlooked or harassed, we might tend to be really hard on ourselves. But a simple recognition that culture change happens, and when we know better, we can do better. Just think of like our parents, right? The baby boomer generation that rather than using car seats, just let us all run around in the backs of Chevys during our childhood. If that happened today, when we see that happening today, we call the cops. Absolutely. We think those people are horrible parents, but we don't turn around and judge past generations for not doing it. It's simply this: when we know better, we do better. And if we can embrace that, we can all move forward. So first step is talking to your people and asking them what language matters to them. Second step is remembering that making a specific change doesn't mean we have to blame everyone that did it a different way in the past. And step number 3 is sometimes you've just got to try it. We can get so tied up in what the operational concerns are going to be. And often this can become a form of resistance to just accepting culture change or social improvements. In reality, it's almost always simpler than we think. Just make the change and then deal with the complications. So as you're out there, as you're struggling with this culture change or maybe embracing it, just remember, we are living in turbulent times. Everyone is going through this. Things are changing on a dime, and people that have never spoken up before are speaking up. There's no such thing as a little thing when it comes to culture. Culture is simply an index of every interaction that takes place between human beings in an organization. And something as little as the word "and" can make all of the difference in what you're trying to accomplish. And remember, no company is perfect, and certainly no leader is. Just remember to be great every day. Thanks for listening, everyone. I am Daniella Young, TEDx speaker, author, and combat veteran. I write and talk about all kinds of things related to culture. I'm also the co-founder of Cavness HR. Cavness HR is a virtual HR tech company, and our mission is to bring big business level HR and make it available to small businesses. Normally, small businesses, those with say 50 employees or less, don't have the need or oftentimes the income to have full-time HR staff. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't have the protections and the expertise of those who are skilled in human resources, culture, leadership development, and everything surrounding that. So we are creating a series of innovative tech products and online virtual consulting, as well as 24/7 access to HR professionals at your fingertips on a subscription model. So check us out today, www.cavnesshr.com, and see if we might be the right fit for you. You can also just follow us on all kinds of social media to get daily tips, wonderful fantastic live stream blogs with me and all kinds of other great content. You can also follow me on Twitter at Daniella M. Young or link up with me on LinkedIn, Daniella Mestinek Young, to see more exciting news about the book that I am currently writing. Thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.